down, he'd either take his belt off and put the belt over me, or go out to the apple tree and get a twitch off the tree and then pull your pants down. And I'll come back to my sister Ellie, but just to show you, just like with her, she's been married 7 times. She has so much bitterness and anger in her heart, and I've tried to talk to her numerous times here. And I could just see it as the older I was getting, the trend. It's like with my oldest sister, her and her husband's marriage was the spitting image of my mother and father's. My mother and father, they were good providers, don't get me wrong, but I didn't come from they portrayed we were a Christian home, but we were far from a Christian household. And I can't ever remember them even going to church with us other than maybe Christmas. You know, but they made sure we always went to church. And that, like I said, that pretty much sent me on the course against the Lord, because I couldn't understand that He's such a loving God and that stuff, but yet the house that we had. And it was nothing but a bunch of kids that were jealous of each other. And they basically laid the groundwork. One thing the Lord has given me is a lot of common sense. I mean, He might slap me around 2 or 3 times, but I soon stand up and pay attention. You know, He's trying to get my attention. What I mean by that is that I watched my sister, her and her husband. It was a picture book of my mom and dad's marriage. And then with my brothers, they just continually started drinking, and they just stayed in the bottle. And when I was going to jail, I beat a cop up, and I was going to do 6 months in jail. Well, then I sort of laid low, and within 30 days, I was drinking one night, and I decided to go down to the club. And I went down to the club and met a bunch of my hoodlum buddies and that stuff, and we decided we were going out for breakfast, and I volunteered to drive. And the cops were laying for me because of what happened there earlier that month, and they ended up picking me up on a DUI. And I kept that from my wife, and I had a draft system at home. Just to show you the kind of drinking we were doing at that time, I had a draft system at home in my shed/little garage, and we drank Jenny Cream Ale. And we always had half barrels, 16-ounce barrels, and I always kept one in the cooler down at the VFW in case she blew on a Sunday. And in 40 or 52 weeks, my wife and me went through my checkbook a couple of years later, after God delivered me from the alcoholism. But in 52 weeks, we put 48 halves through it. I had a lot of help. You find out who your true friends are once you try to clean your act up and walk a righteous path. But anyhow, I ended up doing 6 months in jail. But right before that, one night in my shed there, I sat there and I got drunk, and I was really seriously thinking about shooting myself, committing suicide. Because I knew this would tear my mother apart. We found out about this DUI, and then my wife, I didn't really know how she was going to handle it. So that night in the shed, I got on my knees and I cried out to the Lord and said, I can't take it no more. And I probably finished my beer. I got up out of there. I went to bed. I got up the next morning, and I never touched a drop of alcohol since that. When I woke up the next morning, I knew something happened. And I knew it was from the Lord. I never touched a drop of alcohol after that. And all my friends and everything, and even my brothers and that, they were just salivating, waiting for the day I'd get back drinking again. You know, saying, you know, that's nice, you know, but I knew in the back of their mind that they, you know, and so I just stayed the course and really you know, and that's what I've told numerous people. I said, I've probably given myself to Jesus 3 times in my life and backslid, you know. And I said, God, Jesus looks over and says, well, Dad, there he goes again. You know, and the Lord looks back and says, that's all right, son, we'll just mold that clay a little more before we fire it. About 5 years ago, he fired it, and it was phenomenal, but I'll come to that once So I was going to jail, and the contractor I was working for, he said to me, he said to keep him in the loop that he would help me out. Well, how he was going to help me out, he was going to take advantage of me because he knew I wanted out on work release. And the first year I started my business, I worked out of county jailhouse. I went and borrowed some money off a loan shark. I went to my dad first, and he just belittled me and my dad was big at just smashing your dreams down. I mean, I was so, not that I was beat my drum, but I was so very talented in sports and that stuff. And then just other things when I put my mind to it. But you know, when you went to him, he just beat him down. He just say, you know, you can't do that, forget it, this and that. But I went to him and asked him about if I could borrow some money off of him to buy a machine. He said, no, you know, just get a job. So I ended up, I borrowed some money off a loan shark, bought an old backhoe, and that's basically how I started my business. I just started from there, and just basically, I just was working pretty much constantly. And then as, of course, through time, I ended up stepping out with my wife, and it wasn't that I was looking for anything. I was addicted to sex. There's no other word to put about it. You know, and it's like I've told my kids, once you mess with fire, you're going to get burnt. Don't ever think you're going to control it. And that's just a constant battle with my flesh. Because, like I said, in my youth, I was very active. And then through the course of time, and I ended up stepping out on my wife. And that pretty much, it broke her heart. There's no two ways about it. But my wife had a lot of faith, and she forgave me. And just this year, we celebrated 33 years of marriage. And as the years went on, our love for each other just grown more and more. But she could never understand, because she was with maybe one other person in her life, and she could never understand. And I'd just shake my head at her and I'd say, Mom, you really don't understand what I'm going through. You know, and everything you see today is either sex or violence. And these kids today, it's just sad. And I recommend to all you parents in that I'd shut that devil box out of your house, because all they're doing is brainwashing the youth through that television set and through these iPods and everything else. It's a way for them to program the kids, the youth, and even the adults today. It's awful. So that phase of my life went through, and then as my kids got older, I tried to be open with them, and you know, I was active in alcohol, drugs. I did pretty much all the other than real hard drugs. I never got into acid or LSD and that, but marijuana, speed, cocaine, I did all that stuff. And looking for a false high, basically. I was looking for something I couldn't find. And like I said there, when God delivered me the first time there from my alcoholism, I knew it was Him. But I backslid and then went right back into the world again and just continued on with my life. Well, then through the course of time there, my mother started getting ill. And I had a violent temper. And my mother got ill, and she was a registered nurse, so she knew pretty much, and it was amazing because my dad back in 1977 had 3 arteries replaced in his heart. And back at that time, they give you 5 years to live. And he was living. My mother was never as sick in a day in her life that I could remember much. And she started coming down and acting funny and this and that. And well, then we found out she had lung cancer because they both smoked pretty heavy. And so anyhow, my dad quit whenever he was had his heart operation, but my mother just kept smoking. Well, then she came down with lung cancer, and she was doing the chemotherapy and that stuff. Well, then through the course of a year, the cancer left her lungs and they couldn't find it. Well, we didn't have a clue, but it went on up into her head. And she pretty much knew that. So we took her to the hospital, and then they told her she probably had about 2 weeks to live, and she wanted to come home and die at home. So we brought her home, and she lived pretty much 6 weeks to the day when we brought her home. But in that course of the time, in that 6 weeks, the Lord was using something there for me to bring me back to my childhood, which I've sort of pretty much blocked it out of my mind. Now, when I'm telling you, my dad used to beat. One night he took a one-inch oak cane, and broke it over my back. When he would go off, he would go off. And then my mother would just sit there and justify. And it usually was something stupid that I did, but one time he beat me that bad I lost control, all the use of my bowels. All my bowels let go. I started a leaf fire back at our camp, and then got out of hand. But he gave me a thrashing that day. But anyhow, all this stuff was bottled up. When my mother came home to die, through the course of 3 or 4 weeks, the whole family was there. And it just brought back memories. It was just going, and most of the stuff I justified back at that point when we were all kids. Nobody really understood. But now we're at this stage in life and we're all adults, and they were all acting the same and coming after me again and that stuff. So the one night my mother had a picture of Jesus there in the living room, and I took the picture and I took it in and put it in her bedroom and hung it up there in her bedroom. And I said to my brothers and sisters, I said, let's go in, I want to pray in there. So we went in, and I said a prayer about how thankful I was for my parents and all this and that. And after it was done, I went out in the hallway, and my dad came out and he started shedding some tears. And that was very unusual for my father. I never seen my father cry once. And I remembered that. I kept thought, you know, this is a little strange. Well, then he started talking that night about his brother, about how his brother took a book away from him when he was a kid, and his dad come over and clubbed him and give his brother the book back. And I'm sort of thinking, now this is a little strange, you know, but I'm remembering all this stuff. Because you got to remember, when I grew up, all my grandparents were dead and gone, and so I really had no history of the back part of either side of my parents' families.